Hey guys, and welcome. Here we are, a week along from last week, and boy, what a week it's been. I just was listening to the vice presidential debate about an hour ago, and there's all kinds of other things that are online to talk about today. But first, I want to start, as always, greeting all three of you, and hello to you all.
Hi, Will.
Hello from Texas.
Hey,
I
Bill.
will.
Hey,
This
Phil.
is
Hey,
this is
Callista.
Phil from California. I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Yeah, I'm doing
I'm great.
fine.
Yep, it's great. Everything's good.
Change of
Excellent.
seasons.
Yeah, we got spring
Definitely.
coming up, which is really nice, and all the birds are around and the flowers are open, and it's really great. Great
Wow.
And
times.
and up here in Canada, it's the exact opposite. Everything's starting to cool down, and the trees' leaves are falling, and definitely fall. Absolutely fall. Oh,
How are you
okay.
going, Bill?
Yeah, sorry.
We have a very short fall and very short spring here. It almost jumps from summer directly into winter, but it's cooler now, and will be a lot cooler later.
Right. Well, it's hot enough in the political arena, and let's start with the vice presidential debate today between Harris and oh, quick, give me his name. I just forgot his name.
Mike
Vice
Pence.
Pence.
President Pence. Thank you. It just was one of those brain farts, guys.
The vice
Anyway,
president the world forgot.
well, he was brilliant tonight. I thought he was the clear winner of the debate. Might be a bit biased there, but he seemed to be much sharper and clearer and willing to address some of the bigger issues. And she was just always in attack mode and telling him what a lousy job Trump had done and they had done. And no, I think of the two, he was far more senior and diplomatic and spot on and addressed the issues. So I thought it was a good debate. It was well worth listening and watching. Did you guys get a chance to see it or parts of it?
Yeah, I got a chance to listen to a bit of it. I just saw a bit of it on Parler, and I listened to that. I find it very difficult to listen to her. She has this nasal snarl that's not very attractive. And I think I would find her a lot more attractive if she was dressed in Guantanamo Bay orange jumpsuit, actually.
I hear she also sneered a lot at Pence.
She's either sneering, snarling, or she's got this hysterical giggle that she sort of resorts to when she can't think of anything else. I find her extremely juvenile.
Mm, mm. How about you, Bill? Did you get a chance to see it at all?
Yeah, I saw the end of it. I guess we can conclude that Callista is not a fan, and neither am I, for that matter. I thought she did very little question answering and a whole lot of dancing around. Typical politician. Pence was very polished, politician like, but at least he was coming out with some definite information and answering questions.
Hmm.
So I'll say he won on points.
It will be interesting to see what your mainstream fake news people do with it all. I would not be surprised whatsoever if they proclaim Harris as the winner of it all. But we'll wait and see, I guess. Of course,
Yeah, the
all.
only commentary I heard was from One American News, and they're very pro-Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to say, alt news will have a different perspective, no doubt. But if it goes to mainstream, well, we know what they already have as their agenda. So, Phil, how about you? Did you get a chance to see it at all?
I had the opportunity. I sat down to watch the whole thing, but then my phone rang and I was on that call till well after the debate ended. Although on my computer screen I could see it in a little corner of my screen live with the subtitles down below, but I really didn't pay attention to it, so I can't really comment. I do know that it'll be very interesting because I am going to watch it. Of course, it was about 90 minutes long, I think, so I could rewatch it later tonight. But I do know there was a lot of anticipation leading up for this vice presidential debate because of the different styles of the two candidates, and many people pointed out Vice much more seasoned and experienced debater than Kamala Harris is. And so there was a lot of people speculating.
Whoops, I don't know if we
How affect.
Phil, you seem to be in a spot where you're fading in and out. Maybe your signal's not that good, because we're losing you.
Why don't you guys talk for a moment, and I will relocate my computer. I'll mute myself and get closer to my modem. Maybe that'll make a difference, but I'm not too far away from it. I'm not sure what's going on, but maybe that'll help. So I'll be back in a second. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Phil.
Yeah,
So
we'll
carry on, and I'll. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. Anyway, unless anybody wants to mention specifics about the debate, points made about different topics, we'll move on. Unless you guys have anything further to say on that.
No, I'd rather move on.
Yeah, I don't think it was really all that remarkable.
Right. Well, we'll see in the next few days what kind of commentary comes out. But it was an interesting debate, I thought. And like you said, I can't, Callista, like you said, I'm not a fan of hers, and I couldn't stand her nasal voice either. I find it very, very irritating. But hey, there you go. So let's move on, because I think I would like to chat now about the whole COVID virus that hit the president and got him into the hospital and everything. Very, very significant how he got out in 3 days, and how it is that the mainstream is trying to say how irresponsible it is. He took his mask off when he got to the White House on the balcony there, or wherever he was. And also, they're just not giving any credit to the fact that he took therapeutics that seem to have helped him, or at least that's what we're told. That's what is there, because they just don't accept therapeutics. So, interesting situation. Bill, how about you talking a bit on that one?
Well, I saw that extended tweet that he put out today, and I was very impressed with him talking about Regeneron. He had been saying before that he would have the troops distribute the vaccine. In this report, he indicated that that might be after the election, but that the troops would be distributing Regeneron to hospitals where it would be administered for free to citizens. I think this whole COVID thing is going to end not too long after the election, because it's a farce, and a lot of people are beginning to understand it's a farce, and a lot of people are beginning to take action against it. But anyway, in regard to those troops that are going to be distributing the Regeneron, they're also, he didn't say this, but they're also going to be pre-positioned to handle riots if they occur.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because I always had a feeling with that when he announced that the military troops would be used to distribute the vaccination and everything. What you just said, I thought, oh, and that would be putting him in position to deal with civil unrest, maybe. So that's exactly what you're saying. That's interesting.
I would agree.
Phil, go
Oh,
go
good.
ahead.
Well, Well, speaking to people, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting. Just let me know. I'm right next to my modem, so my signal should be clear. But I've been speaking to a lot of people who've been going to a lot of political rallies lately that I've been running across who don't particularly know, that I follow these things. And a lot of them are starting to connect dots and think and notice patterns. And one of the things that I've noticed people saying is, I think Trump did a lot of stuff when he said COVID is taking over and we have to be safe. I think he's doing things while he's telling the media and the public that we're doing all these changes because of the virus, but he's actually doing something else. And like what Bill just said, if the troops are going to distribute this supposed COVID cure, and they're going to be mobilized throughout different parts of the country to give the public this cure so it takes away their fear of this virus, it would make sense also that there's a double reason for this. They're repositioning to anticipate civil unrest, while the cover story is let's hand out some doses of COVID cure. And I think that makes total sense, because I think we've seen the Trump administration use the enemy's actions against themselves by letting them control, or what they think control is the narrative to the media, and they play along with it as if there is a COVID pandemic that's killing everybody and other things, and they're actually doing something else. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually getting a heads up on any civil unrest that, from what I've been told, is expected to be induced up around election time. And a lot of people are concerned for that. In fact, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but some people I've seen out in front of grocery stores that are taking petitions of various kinds for the upcoming elections to recall certain elected officials have commented to me that they're noticing a lot of people going into grocery stores and coming out with huge amounts of water and supplies and canned goods and this sort of thing. And their answers when she asked them, why are you doing that, was the same, was we're stocking up. We're stocking up for a shutdown. They're just preparing. It's like the squirrels know it's time to gather the nuts for the winter. And people who have a heart to feel and eyes to see are realizing we could be going into some choppy water here, and it might be smart to simply be prepared just in case.
Right. That makes sense to me.
Well, my wife
Any
April
thoughts?
tells me that going to the grocery store lately, there's plenty of everything except canned goods, and the canned goods are just about wiped out.
Suggesting people are buying them up. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Interesting.
And of course, we have plenty. We've always, for years, we've had plenty.
Mm-hmm. Right. How about you, Callista, in regard to this COVID thing with Trump and everything?
I think that there's a lot of different layers here to this whole situation, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking at things astrologically, and I know that Mars is retrograde at the moment, and it won't be going direct until on Friday the 13th of November. And so it's been retrograde for some time, and this, of course, affects the masculine energy, and it has the effect of making the masculine feel like it's confined, it can't do things, it's restricted, and this leads to frustration, anger, and all that sort of thing. And I'm not just talking about men here, because women have a masculine side as well, because we're yin yang, and so we have that as well. And the masculine energy, of course, is all about doing things, getting things done, action. And during this time of Mars retrograde, it tends to slow things down and put blocks in the way of things. And I saw this happening when the president was announced that he had COVID-19 and had to go and do this and that and the other. And then when he came out of hospital and went back to the White House, it was just a flurry of Twitter. And it was like, yeah, he's been confined in a sense, and he's been confined for a long time. And now he's starting to kick out and just really express himself and bring all the stuff through. Of course, there's the D class and all that, which we'll talk about later on. But to do with the COVID itself, there's a lot of stories around this. And one of them that I heard was that the people who were on the Biden side of the debate that President Trump and Biden took part in were tested positive for COVID. So there was the thought that the infection came from that camp. It's also thought that the infection might have come from Kellyanne Conway's husband, who was there. And so there's all these sort of intrigues going on, you know, who's responsible for it and all the rest of it. Personally, I don't think he had it at all. And I think he was on Air Force One on his way to Greenland. I think he had business elsewhere, out of the country at the time. And that was just a cover story. That's my thought on the whole thing.
Yeah, I've heard that some speculate, as you just did, that maybe he was on Air Force One and there was a reason for it. But what is very interesting indeed, you said he's been in confinement for a long time, and I know, I'm assuming maybe, that the confinement you're talking about really wasn't confinement at the hospital or in the White House, but the confinement for him to finally start lashing out and revealing and speaking the truth about things that he's been confined from speaking up until now. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. And then, of course, we have, he came out and said, right, declass everything about the Russian collusion, declass everything about the Hillary emails, the Clinton emails, and no redactions. And that was like, yes, at last, something is going to happen.
Do you think this is one of the trump cards, if not the trump card?
I don't know, but I think it's provided a welcome relief for Mars being retrograde and nothing happening. I think this was really necessary. Yep.
Yeah. That's amazing if you think about it, that it's all coming together at this time. And another aspect of the fact that he was alleged, I guess it's not a fact, but anyway, alleged to have the virus, is that he went in and this made him more human to many people. Oh my God, the president's got COVID, and we're told it's the elderly that will suffer. And of course, the Democrats wanted to try to evoke the 25th Amendment. He's not available for to serve in his office in like 3 days, and he's out again. I think this is also on his part a way of showing him you don't have to be afraid of the virus. And he twittered that. And this is something that's going to break, I think, the stranglehold that COVID has had on well, the world really, but in America in particular right now. And then added to what you just said about his flurry of Twitters and his lashing out and the declass and the no redaction and all that. Very, very, very significant and absolutely perfectly timed.
And also, you've had the situation where the Jews in New York were told that they could not meet in temple, and they ended up burning their masks. This is another thing where people are saying, no, enough is enough. We're not going to continue with this charade any longer.
That's important too, yeah. What do you guys think about those points?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, in regard to the Trump getting COVID-19, Whether he actually got it or not is an open question, but he certainly used that as an opportunity to come out and talk about Regeneron and how quickly he got that taken care of and how nobody needed to be in fear of COVID 19 whatsoever, and that
Mhm.
Regeneron would be distributed for free. Uh,
Right.
in other words, forget about COVID 19. If you get it, take the medicine, you're done.
Yeah, and that's really important to cut down on the fear factor, because that's what the deep state and the dark ones are feeding off all the time, because a lot of their food supplies have dried up, and they are just trying to incite fear in the population just so they can feed off that. And the less fear there is, the better off we are. So it's a good point, Bill. Excellent.
Very much so. How about you, Phil?
Well, I think it also alleviates the concern of a lot of people who want to stay home and vote. If it's that easy to get over this COVID thing, I'll just go to the polls and make sure my vote counts. And this further erodes the Democratic Party narrative of it's too dangerous to vote in person. You have to use these ballots and let the Postal Service take them in and securely uh, count them in. But the other thing I noticed too was that when he announced that he had supposedly COVID, all the major news media outlets said, they got their experts on TV saying, well, the protocol is a quarantine of 14 days, 10 to 14 days. And then we watch the president after he comes out, because there's this tricky period when you're symptom free, but, et cetera, et cetera. He comes back in 3 days, not wearing a mask, raring to go, completely healthy. And this forced the media to scramble on how to cover this, because he just broke all protocols that he said he was going to do. And what this did is it painted the media into their own corner, because as they sat there and said, oh my God, he's come back after 3 days, he's not wearing a mask, he's endangering the Secret Service, his own family, the whole world. Um, we're gonna I have a feeling that this was done on purpose to show the public, maybe not in the too distant future, what liars the mainstream media is. Just my opinion.
Yeah,
Oh no.
yeah, good point. And
But
also, the Biden camp, of course, were hoping that he wouldn't be available for a debate, and guess what? He's raring to go for that debate. I think it's next week.
Well,
next week,
if I
and
were Joe Biden,
I
I'd be bricking my knickers, because I don't know how after the first debate, and he was wired up. We know this now. He was wired up. The mainstream
Mm-hmm.
media is just magically not even talking about it. But now that the Trump camp is wise to what Biden was doing, and the fact that even with that, he wasn't the sharpest knife on the block, I really would look forward to seeing what that debate would be and what excuse Biden will use to say, I'm not going to debate him. He's still contagious and I'm an at risk geriatric. I can't debate him. I'd be real curious to see how that plays out. But there's a lot of different ways his premature re-entry to the White House could play out. And I think if this is military planning at its finest, and we're still early in October, I think we're seeing a what's the word? A very precise unfoldment of October surprises that build towards a crescendo. And I think we're
Mm-hmm.
just getting to the beginning of a very strategic, sequential October surprise. With Trump getting declassed, COVID. Everyone around him's got COVID. The Joint Chiefs of Staff have COVID. His staff has COVID. The speaker has COVID. What's her name? The lady, Feisty.
Nancy Pelosi.
No, McEnany.
McEnany.
Kaylee.
Right.
Haley.
That one. Everyone has COVID, and I think they did it partially to protect them, because we're getting close to the money shot now. It would make sense to me that they would want to pull all the VIPs in the Trump administration out of the public eye long enough for certain operations to go down, but using the COVID quarantine as the public cover to get them off the daily public stage, which is what has just happened. And now they've reemerged, or at least the president has, which leads me to believe that something significant happened over the past 3 days that now allowed the president to come back and be somewhat seen, somewhat public. And now, of course, he went on a Twitter rampage that we've already mentioned, where he said no redactions. And Q has been active the past few days, and he keeps using the quote, "Let's see what happens." And he's been dropping hints about Biden and his son taking bribes to favor U.S. policy towards China and Ukraine. And would that mean that if he were elected, Ukraine and China would then, in fact, be controlling the United States in the White House? He's dropped some other hints as well, and it's just getting super, super juicy. But that also means that for me, living in a very blue state, I might want to might want to prepare for all eventualities with an unpredictable public. But you can see that there is a very precise dance taking place with the 5D chess master, and you can tell that they're in control. And we're looking at defensive posturing from the Biden camp and the media because they're starting to lose control, especially if in New York, the Jewish population is burning their masks because de Blasio said these regulations about meeting for worship. You don't do that to a very large. They're starting to lose control, and you can see it.
Well,
Yeah, and talking about Q, I noticed Q's been posting a lot today, and the last one was concerning, well, just reiterating about the shadow president, the shadow government, the information warfare, the irregular warfare, colour revolutions, and insurgency. And I was remembering the other day, I thought, okay, what was the very first Q post on the 30th of October, 2017? Hillary Clinton has been detained. And if we're working backwards through the Q clock, we're pretty close to October the 30th, hey?
Increasing deltas, 2-year deltas, maybe it's back to a 4-year, 3-year delta where
3-year delta.
Yeah, it won't make sense because that very first Q post, I remember that one. I said, this guy can't be legit. Hillary hasn't been detained. But when you put it into context of what's going on now, it literally puts chills in my spine. I'm getting the willies right now thinking about it, that they could have the foresight to have that much insight. I'll just put it that way. To be able to print something like that through an obscure message board 3 years ago and have it be near exact 3 years later. And we've seen Q proofs 2 years later, 1 year later. It's become uncanny now. So as Q has said many times, how many coincidences does it take until it becomes mathematically impossible? And I think you're starting to see it come towards a crescendo. But I'd be very surprised, I really would, if Hillary Clinton was apprehended publicly before the election.
Well, we'll see, but future proves past. And the Q team has proved time and time again that they must have access to some sort of time machine or something that's providing them with information that no one else can get. So that's really interesting.
Plus, if Hillary Clinton is taken in, first of all, she herself this time is not running against him, so she's not involved in the politics. She is a criminal, and if they go after her, it won't be Trump sending the troops or sending the police in after her. It'll be Barr and the AIG and everything,
That's right, and that's why I think it's significant that Trump has been very definite about, okay, we're going to declass everything about her emails and everything about the Russian collusion and no redactions. So everything's going to come out. And here we are on the 8th of September. And so, it's only a few more weeks 3 weeks at the most, and you're at the 30th of October. And so, did I say September or October? I meant the 8th of October. And so there you go. I mean, who knows what can happen? Things can happen on the turn of a dime.
Absolutely. They certainly are doing exactly that. I mean, this whole thing about Trump coming down allegedly with the COVID, and he's in there for 3 days and he's out again, perfectly healthy. If that's not the turning of the dime, turning on the dime, I don't know what is. It's like, wow, look what he just did. Incredible.
What do you reckon, Bill?
Well, I see the gap widening between the group on one side, Trump and the Patriots, which are saying that COVID-19 is a hoax. Trump is not quite yet saying that, but he's getting very close to that. And the group on the other side that's still trying to instill fear. I just heard today that Governor Newsom of California has issued an edict where family members who are eating together in a public restaurant need to wear their mask between bites.
What?
Yeah, I saw that too. I thought, yeah, good luck with that one.
Well, they're
It's
getting
more-
crazier with their requirements for masks and so forth, and the public is just going to recognize that.
It's getting more and more ridiculous, isn't it? And is it the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, I think is her name, who's defying the court injunction or whatever it was that was raised and told her to cease and desist making these kind of stupid laws that are against the Constitution itself, constitutional rights of the individuals in Michigan. And she just snubbed her nose at him. When are these people going to start being recalled and ousted out of power and arrested for endangering the public through their deceitful actions? This has got to also start falling into place. Maybe after the elections, but it's still going to happen, I think.
Well, there's another thing going on related to that. There's a lady named Peggy Hall in California who's been giving a real hard time to some of the, what do they call them? Their county commissioners here. I think it's Board of Supervisors in California. But she's telling them that they're in violation of not only state laws, but also federal laws. And she is in the process of organizing something she calls the Healthy American Legal Network, which she wants to be in every state to file lawsuits against local officials, not only for state law, which varies from state to state, but for federal law, which is the same throughout. And federal law has a provision concerning hoaxes related to biological hazards. And if you're convicted of participating in a hoax, the sentence for that is life imprisonment.
Cool. I wouldn't want to be Tony Fauci.
Right.
No. He get 4 life sentences.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting, and I hope she has great success with that.
Well, let me give out her email. She's asking for people in the different states to contact her to organize. And her email is Peggy, Peggy, at thehealthyamerican.org. So people can email her and find out how to set up a local chapter of Healthy American Legal Network.
Right. That's great. Excellent. Thank you for that. And I wanted to ask you guys, have you heard about Finton and Judicial Watch is being, well, Finton in particular has been called into some kind of position at the White House or something?
Yeah, he's on
that?
the White House. Yeah, he's on the White House staff now, which is great. I think that's a great opportunity for him, because he's worked so hard over the last few
Right.
years, you know, with this Clinton email case. And yeah, I think that's a great move. I was really pleased about that.
And isn't it
Yeah.
about he officially to go after these different states that are going against the laws of the electorate list, or whatever the names that are supposed to be, of dead people and other things? And he's taking his job with Judicial Watch to the more official level that he's been endorsed to do so now through the White House. It's something like that. I that's why I want clarification, if any of you guys know any more details on that.
I heard
Nope.
about it, and it gives Tom Fitton some unusual powers, even to the point of removing judges, if I understood what
Yes, I heard something about that. Go on, Bill.
Yeah, I don't know that much more about it because I literally haven't read anything about it. I've been picking this up from sound bites, and I believe that President Trump named him in this position, which gives him some kind of legitimate power to actually do something. And so he must have some sort of legal background. Of course, he's been doing wonderfully, getting a lot of court decisions in his favor for disclosing the truth, and thus backing up the whole rule of law theme that the president has had. But I don't know much more than that. But it seems that if this is an actual position that the president could name someone for, he'd be perfect for it, because he's already well acquainted with the corruption. He knows the legal ins and outs. And if he has any kind of executive authority to actually demand that things be done, we might see some dirty judges removed. And I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of them in the next 6 to 12 months anyway, after Trump wins re-election, because there's going to be a whole lot of remaining bureaucrats and other members of government that have not been drained yet, that are going to suddenly find it very timely to retire if they don't get arrested.
Hey, they can start with Sullivan for one.
Oh, yeah. He's probably being bribed. He's between a rock and a hard place. And yeah, he may have put himself there way back the line, but he knows if he does the right judicial thing, he's finished. And if he doesn't do the right judicial thing, which he is now, he's only delaying the inevitable, and he's going to pay one way or the other. So the guy's in a really tough spot, but eventually he's going to exhaust his options. He already looks ridiculous, and this is unprecedented in American law at that level, as far as I am aware. Both sides saying we rest our case, we don't want to pursue it, and the judge won't let it happen. The judge is supposed to be neutral. He's not even supposed to care. If both parties in conflict are in agreement, the judge should be saying, very well then, case dismissed, your motion's granted. But he's not letting it die, and thus keeping General Flynn under some sort of gag order that if he's ever freed from, he'd be able to go public immediately and just waylay the Democratic Party and all of the things he knew were happening 4 years ago. It would be a disaster. So isn't it funny that it's all happening right now, less than a month away from the election? But I have a feeling he's not going to do diddly. This Emmett Sullivan judge is not going to do anything until after the election.
Well, he's got Obama. He's got Obama paying the piper there. God.
Yeah, Obama was the one that ordered him to hold things up with Flynn. Absolutely. But what amazes me as an outsider to it all, in the sense of being a foreigner and all, is that he can get away with it. That they just didn't go in and say, you're done, out of here, pack your bag and take your robes with you. How is he allowed to do this? Surely common sense must dictate this is illegal, immoral, and criminal.
Well, people have been discussing for years the unusual power that judges have. They're some of the most powerful people in American government. And I believe in Sullivan's case, they're elected for life, or are they appointed by the president for life, or are they voted?
Not for, that's only the prime justices, that chief justices, I should say, who have that for life employment, if you want to call it that.
Right, they hold the position for life. Okay.
Just the judge himself, I don't think it's a life-long appointment.
But who oversees a judge at that high rank if there's any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? If there's any skullduggery, who oversees them?
Good word. Yes, skullduggery. Yee. Well,
the Court of Appeals is above him, and they have already told him to end it. Right. And he has acknowledged and said, okay, I'm going to end it. But he has not done so. And his only hope is that Biden gets elected, or else he is going down in flames.
Yeah.
Well, that's not much hope then, and he better kiss his ass goodbye, because he's going down in flames.
But appeals court judges don't like to rule against their own because they're in the same good old boys network. And it's very much a conflict of interest for the Brotherhood of the Black Robe to rule against another colleague from a lower court when they know exactly what that judge in the lower court is trying to do. And if they're sympathetic to Sullivan, it really puts them in a rock and a hard place. And maybe this is why you see the wheels of justice grinding so slowly, because the corruption is everywhere. It's systemic throughout the entire American system.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And that really, I just don't understand that, because America seems to be full of people who are lawyers, and yet they seem to be using the law to feather their own nest and get away with, unlawful behavior. Now, remember that couple, where are they? Are they in Georgia, where they had to go out and defend their home because of Antifa?
That's right. Yeah, McCauley or what? McCluskey.
Yeah, they've been a grand jury has indicted them for defending their own property. I mean, how can you? I just don't see how that can happen.
Well, all it takes is a local prosecutor who has the authority to simply press charges. Anyone can do it. It's up to you to prove it in a court of law. If I wanted to sue Bill, he's an American, I'm an American. If I wanted to sue Bill, I could just go into courtroom and file a lawsuit against Bill. Nothing's stopping me. It's my burden to prove it later. And because the stakes are high, it's an election year, and this is it for the deep state. If you're a local prosecutor and you're told these people are using guns and they're threatening people and we have to keep the narrative going, arrest them, charge them with whatever, and then we'll get them convicted and show the world that defending your property and using guns on peaceful protesters that happen to be BLM or pro-Antifa is un-American and all these kind of things. And it's all optics.
So why have you got your Second Amendment? What use is a Second Amendment if you can't defend your property? What's the use of having an arsenal if you can't use it?
Because one of the big unanswered questions about American politics is do states have individual rights and screw the federal government? Or does the federal government have jurisdiction over all of the states? This has to go back to the founding of the nation, and whether the states are individual nations that are unionized for their common defense, or whether the federal government became an overriding entity that had control over all of them. And this is something that Trump has largely been steering away from. And it's a big elephant in the room for people who have been watching Trump wield his power and not wield his power, is where under the Constitution, if you really look at it, is where does the buck stop, at the federal level or the state level? This goes back to the founding of the Organic Constitution and how things got co-opted into the United States, going from a country to a for-profit corporation in 1871. And no one's really asked that question yet. It's complicated, and I'm not sure I have the answer tonight. But somewhere in this mess, it's going to eventually have to be rectified. But I think that has a large reason for why Trump didn't just come in and start cleaning house during all the riots. He left it up to the states, and he put it squarely on where the responsibility lie according to the law, the way it's currently written, in that states have individual jurisdiction over their own domains, and that the federal government only has limited reach. And this is something that has been going back and forth in the courts for a long time. But I think its murky origins goes back somewhere between where the country of the United States as a country got co-opted when it became a for-profit corporation incorporated in 1871. Right, Bill?
Well, I have heard that. I don't really know that much about the incorporation, but I know a lot about the Constitution. And I see Trump being very careful not to violate that and allowing the states to do their own thing largely. But I think that will shift somewhat after the election, and we'll see a lot more federal action after that.
Well, I hope so. I hope you guys can get your act into gear because, you're the tip of the spear, and where you go, everyone else goes. So I hope it gets sorted out soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that freedom coming to Canada. I mean, there are a bunch of docile sheep up here who are just going ahead with the whole rhetoric of the government of um, Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. I was going to call him something else, but I won't. I'll be nice about it. But the point I wanted to make about the McCloskeys that's also important to this whole thing is remember that the American judicial system is based on common law, and common law is about precedent. So in some ways, it might be a good thing that the McCloskeys have been indicted this way because it will set precedent. How is it that you will be charged with some kind of act of violence when you're defending your castle and home from a raging mob of 300 people or however many there were? And if it's proven that they have every right to do so, they are well within their constitutional rights of defending themselves. This, according to common law, becomes new precedent, which will make it even stronger, the Constitution and the right to bear arms and to defend yourself. So this, in the end, could all work out very strongly for all Americans and their constitutional right to bear arms. Second Amendment.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. I thought it was ludicrous when I heard that. It's like, how absurd is that? But hey, maybe it'll all work out to the very best. Excellent. Good discussion, guys.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. I was just going to say, any other points anybody wants to bring up about events recently?
I have a couple small comments about Q and some things that have happened in relation to that group. Some time ago, we discussed the Q clock that was the Mickey Mouse clock with the hour hand on 10 and the minute hand on 2.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering whether that meant whether it was supposed to be October 2nd. And then looking at the minute marks that were red, there were 8-minute marks that were red. And I'm kind of the opinion you take those 8-minute marks and add that 8 to the 2, and you come up with October 10th, 10/10/2020.
Oh, nice.
That may well be an important day.
Yeah.
That's in 2 days.
And also, in regard to that clock, there was an interview with Kayleigh McEnany. I don't recall who was interviewing her. Somebody was. And the interview extended over some period of time.
10 minutes.
In the picture, behind her, there was a clock on the shelf. And that clock did not move. The hands of that clock did not move during that time. So it was just not operational or not plugged in. But the interesting thing about that clock was the hands were on 10 and 2.
That's
Well,
right.
that
And
was
also
a lot of action.
on the shelf behind Kaylee, where the clock was, a little bit up on another shelf, there was a white porcelain elephant.
What's the significance of the white porcelain elephant, other than I think it's
Isn't the elephant
well,
isn't the elephant to do with the Republican Party?
No, it's the Democratic Party.
The
Yeah.
elephant.
Yeah, the donkey is for the Republicans, isn't it?
No,
It is?
no, it's the other way around.
Well, I'm going to have to ask our two American friends here, which is it?
Well, I may have that reversed. I normally ignore that stuff.
I think most Democrats are jackasses.
Okay, then the elephant's a Republican.
Right.
And was the trunk up or down?
I don't know.
No, the trunk was closed and locked.
No.
Anyway, it's still significant. They don't just put something like there for no reason whatsoever. That was significant. They placed it there, and maybe it was saying, if it is the Democrats, I'm not quite certain, the elephant being the logo for whichever, but it could be saying, well, time's running out on the elephants, on the Democrats, if it is. But it could be the opposite. I don't know.
Now that I think about it, that elephant is Republican.
Well, that's what I thought it was.
Okay,
because
good,
I thought
good.
that the donkey was very appropriate for the Democrats.
Yeah, because Phil just said it. They're a bunch of jackasses.
There you go. Yep, it's the elephant for sure. I've just got it up here on DuckDuckGo, and yep, and the elephant has got 3 stars across its back at the top.
Right, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she had an elephant on the shelf behind her.
So that would be a significant
Republican
thing.
symbolism. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Also, in regard to Q, there's a website you can go to where you can monitor the aircraft that are under air traffic control flying all across the U.S. and I think also around the world. But in this particular case, there was a picture showing a map of the U.S., showing all of the aircraft that were in flight. And over on one side, there was a chart with information and another chart on the other side. But one airplane that was flying up in the Chicago area, if you look on the right-hand side, it said it's a Boeing 742, and the call sign is Trump. I'm not Trump. Trust, TRUST, Trust 17, which of course would be Trust 17 or Trust Q. And then on the other side, I forgot what was on the other side, but the important thing is that the Boeing 742 is the military version of the 747, which is used as an airborne command post. So here is this Air Force airborne command post flying with a call sign of Trust 17, which is just a little dig for Q.
That's right. And in addition to that, yesterday's Trust 17 flew to DC as Night 20 and left as Rider 20. Night Rider 2020.
That's interesting.
So the call sign was changed when it left DC.
Right. Wonder what the significance of Knight Rider is. I know was it in the 80s, guys, when they had that TV show with
No. It's Q. Q has Q recognized Carly Bonn on Twitter for something that she'd posted, and he said, "Keep riding Knight Rider, keep riding Knight Riders." And so he's calling them the Knight Riders, because you know how that, way back at the Revolution, they had the Knight Riders that used to go around and they'd be riding through the night and waking people up,
Right, like Paul Revere. of course, was.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. I'm not really all that au fait with that history, but apparently that's what happened. And so Q was referring to Knight Rider, and then you see often, because I follow the boards, and on the boards you've got the plane fags that come in and show various aircraft that are in the air and doing various things at various times, and sometimes their call signs are relevant to what's been going on at that time. They'll use certain call signs, and people who are looking for that will pick that up. So there you go. Thanks for bringing that up, Bill. That's really interesting. I'm fascinated with stuff like that.
Right, and thanks for explaining it. That's helpful. And it also leads me into a last thing that I wanted to mention about Q, who some are not calling Q anymore, but I gather that Facebook has now designated that QAnon is a criminal organization or a terrorist group of, a major proportion, that they've got to now ban anybody that has anything to say about Q or in reference to Q or anything. Have you guys heard about that?
They're panicking.
Yeah, that just means they recognize that more and more people are finding out about Q and watching the messages.
Two people in my personal group that we meet on occasion, regularly to talk about these things as well. They just got permanently banned, and so did not only their personal pages, but their themed pages, their groups as well, permanent. They're just totally erased, gone forever. As well as themselves, at least two. And that's because they were very outspoken. And even though they didn't get that many, you know how you go into Facebook jail, they ban you for so many days. They get that once in a while, but there was no warning. And they were one of many, many dozens, maybe perhaps hundreds of pro-Q or pro-Trump type Facebook groups that just got wiped out. Total censorship. And this is what's interesting to me. We have this First Amendment, we have the gun Second Amendment, but we have freedom of speech. And it's an election year where everyone's allowed to say, I want this candidate. No, I want that candidate. Everyone's allowed to have their opinion. It's free speech, First Amendment. And so here you are using a platform to express your First Amendment rights, and you're getting censored for it, and nobody's taking action. Have you noticed that Trump has not sat there, and there have been no lawsuits that have gotten any media airplay for blatant censorship and the denial of your First Amendment right to free speech? Where are the lawsuits against Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google, YouTube?
I think they're there, but we just don't know about them at the moment, because I know that Devin Nunes has got a few lawsuits up his sleeve about that.
They've been outstanding for some time, but also what's important here is the fact that not only is it against your First Amendment rights, the thing is that Facebook in this case is acting the role of a publisher, not the role of who's the first role? Help me out here, guys. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to be like a bulletin board where you just put up your information. You guys follow me?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
What's the other term? If they're not a publisher, and they're not, a publisher could edit, but they're supposed to be a free and open.
Well, they're supposed to be a platform, a facilitator, not.
Thank you. That's the word. Yes, go on.
And as such, a platform does not censor, but these people are. I really think what they're doing is they're actually working with the white hats on this. I think that's what's happening.
Really?
Yeah, I think so, because it's happening across the board, and for conservatives, and it's just showing people how shocking these Twitter, Facebook, and these other places are, Google, etc. I think they're deliberately having to show themselves as being like that. But that's just what I think, for what it's worth.
Right. Well, they're definitely interfering the rights of all Americans to have free and open discussion.
Yeah, and it's showing
showing
Americans what it's going to be like under a socialist communist government. That's what it is.
Exactly.
They need to have the taste of it. You know, people have to be shown.
So that's why you're saying perhaps it's the White Hatters who are behind this then, because they've got to be shown something like this.
Yeah, because Trump's had, you know, he's had Gates to the White House. He's had the guy from Twitter and what's his name from Facebook. They've all been and hauled over the mat. They've been hauled over the mat and told, okay, well this is the gameplay now. You do this, this, and this. I reckon that's what's happened. Because we've won this whole thing. This whole thing has been won. What we're seeing now is how it's playing out.
That's again a good point to bring forth. This is already so. It's already been accomplished. We're just playing it out. We're fleshing it out. We're taking the steps towards that final result of the election being a Republican and Donald Trump victory.
And so that begs the question: what does a person focus on when all this is played out? And what are you left with? You're left with going within, and that should be your focus anyway, because whatever is going on out there is going on out there. But what's going on within your own sphere, and how do you want your world to look? And only you can decide that. And hopefully, a lot of us have spent a lot of time thinking about this and arranging how we're going to manifest this in our own lives, because only we can manifest what's right for us. And are we in the right frequency to be able to move into that paradigm that we are seeking? Or do we have to really look at ourselves and think, okay, there's a lot of clearing out I still need to do in order to attain that frequency? Because you're not going to go anywhere until your own system is compatible with the frequency of the system you want to go into.
That's interesting then, because the responsibility certainly does lie on our shoulders, as cosmic awareness has said, as we've discussed previously and brought out previously. If we are creator beings, if we are the ones who are actually creating the reality of our own experience, then we have to become abundantly aware that this is so that we don't get dragged into the negativity, the fear, the ignorance, the arrogance of it all, so that we have the ability to actually create. It's there. We're doing it all the time, but if we're creating in accordance to what others are holding to be so, and how the mind control manipulates and pushes it forward to what they want being achieved, because all the docile sheeple people are not even a little bit aware. So just get them thinking what we want them to think. And that's why it's incredibly important, as you just stated, Callista, this is a time for us to go into inner reflection, realizing that maybe we have the capability of creating in your own life your own reality. And
but you can only create if you're in the right frequency.
That too is important. But what does
That's the crunch. The crunch is frequency. Frequency is the crunch. It doesn't matter whether you're looking inwardly or outwardly, it's the frequency that is the crunch.
And what designates the frequency? What is the frequency? That's a bit more complicated. And I think we're in the process of figuring that out. Just the whole Schumann resonance, how that's changing, is showing us frequency is being changed here on the planet.
What do you reckon, Phil?
Well, I would agree. I mean, this whole the last 4 years in America, but really worldwide, has been slow motion. But since the whole COVID pandemic, came onto the scene, it got accelerated and concentrated where everybody, even if you consider yourself awake and aware, or whether you were just a happy muggle going about your daily life, paying your bills and raising your kids and doing that sort of thing, it has forced people out of the norm. And by seeing a series after series after series of unprecedented events, has probably forced many people, regardless of where they are on the spectrum of their consciousness or their political understanding, into a position where they are now starting to question reality, value systems, and there's no one to go to talk to about that except your own heart. So I think a lot of people collectively are going through their own version of reevaluating themselves. And remember, Q has often said the choice to know will be yours. You have a choice to know or not to know. You have a choice to go within and look deeper, or sweep it back under the carpet. And I think a lot of people being out of work, being stuck at home, getting tired of wearing a mask, starting to question the narrative, whether what they're hearing is true. They're doing their own research now. And a lot of people who were formerly anti Trump are like, wait a minute, there might be something here. This is the only thing that makes sense. And this, of course, is causing people to go, wait a minute, that can't be right. I've hated Trump my whole life. And this is going to create a crisis, which cosmic awareness has said before and Will has said many times, is that sometimes you just need to be, dumbhead slapped upside the head to wake up, because you got hit in the face with a cruel reality that maybe everything you've ever been taught was a half truth or a lie. And now you've got to reconcile it somehow about your life in the here and now. And it's getting harder and harder to deny that for everybody, including people who are considered themselves spiritually awake. And this is a great opportunity, but this is what we're going to be left with in the aftermath of any mundane event called an election, is that the people around, well, of course, starting in perhaps America, but then worldwide, are going to have to ask themselves, what does this mean now? Where do we go with this information now that we have been red pilled in mass globally? As Alex Collier has said many times, what do we wish to create once we wake up? We have this creator faculty within us that we've never really exercised. And now we have to ask ourselves globally, where do we wish to go now as a fully awakened, red pilled society? What do we wish to create? And how do we do that in a way that is complementary for the whole? Big challenge, big opportunity.
Absolutely. And that's the whole of it, is that we actually need to look at it as a big opportunity for growth and development on so many levels. So many: personal, of course, collective, globally, nationally. It's just the most amazing of times, even though in some ways it's the most confusing of times. What we stand here at the crossroads of is movement into a whole different reality that's not going to necessarily just blossom overnight after the election's done. The next day it's all changed. That would be like the 2012 event where so many thought, oh yeah, everything's going to change overnight in a blink of an eye. No, we're still going to have to do some work towards that. But there will be an openness of mind and of heart, a hope of heart, that will allow a new reality to start blossoming. And I think that's the big picture, the ultimate big picture,
Yes.
Bill, what do you reckon?
Well, all of this is a part of the shift of consciousness. And right now is an early part, but a very active part and a very critical part. But we will certainly move on from here. And I think it is very valuable in that it is the whole situation that's happening right now is going to cause a lot of people to wake up and find out that everything that they were taught before is not very well related to the way things actually are. And then they can be open to accept some spiritual realities that they never thought about before. I think
Mm,
that's a very good thing.
mm.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we
Yeah,
all agree on that one, don't we?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that we might wrap this up now, Will, because we've been
I was
on here for at least an hour.
Yeah, I was just coming to that. That's good timing there, because I think also it's time to wrap it up. So let's just very quickly, each of us give our own last thought, if you have any, and then we'll bring it to a close. So how about Bill? We'll go back to you again.
I just want to take a nap and wake up around December.
No, you got to be awake to go and vote.
Oh, I forgot. After November 3rd, then I'll take my nap.
Okay, good one. Thanks, Bill. Bill, what you?
You know, as you've said many times, Will, I think the average person who feels detached from what they're watching in the news every day, but wants to contribute and feel involved. I may have said this last week or the week before, but it came to mind again. Just remember that we're creator beings, and continue the self-discipline of holding that vision of the kind of world we wish to live in post-election, and get warm and cozy in your heart and smile with your eyes closed while you see that, and maintain that it be for the highest good for humanity's evolution. That's how we, as civilians, as people that may not be in politics or military, can help the forces that are uplifting the planet to steer it in a quicker, more harmonious manner, because we are all aligning our thoughts in the highest and best way. And to remember that we have that capability, and that we ultimately will be writing our own ticket as to how high we go. Because of this, we are in unprecedented times, but the average person shouldn't forget the fact that they are creator beings as well, and they need to be, I need to be reminded that where attention goes, energy follows. And so that's what I would like to see, is my country and the world transition through this period smoothly, with a minimum of collateral damage, so to speak, and that we have a nice, smooth transition out of the old into the new.
Amen to that. Aho. Callista, any last thoughts?
I was on the boards yesterday and I saw a saying, and I think I've got it right. The saying was, fear is a reaction, courage is a choice.
Wow, that's great. Fear is
And
a
that's
reaction. Courage is a choice. Wow.
and that's my final word.
Okay, good one. And I would just add to that, let's remember also that these are the times we have chosen to be alive in. We didn't come into this time, this place, this state of reality by accident. Each of us has a spiritual entity, being, consciousness, pre-existed this actual physical life. And just as when we leave it, we continue to exist after this physical life. But if it is so that we have chosen this time, this place, these circumstances, then let's remember also that we are part of the change. We have come to be part of the shift. We have come to be those of courage and heart who are standing in and saying, not on my watch. We are here to be part of the change. We are here of the essence of spirit, for we are that essence. And we have right in front of us right now the most amazing time to be alive in. And we chose it. So let's just all kick up our heels and say hallelujah and let's go.
Pass the popcorn. Enjoy the show.
Exactly. Anyway, that's my last thought. So thank you, guys. It's been an eventful week. Well, who knows what the week ahead has in store. But as always, let's plan for next week again. to get together and have another chat. In the meanwhile, thanks a lot, and good night and goodbye, and Auf Wiedersehen for now.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, you guys. It was fun. See you next week.
I think we'll have more to talk about next week. Namaste.
Namaste, Bill. Thanks, everyone. Bye, everyone.